Someone get me a Mandarin translator, now!
Sir,
Derek turned, saw the cleaning lady.
I speak Mandarin.
You speak Mandarin? A woman like you only knows how to moan in bed.
I understand what he's saying, please.
He slapped the mop from her hands.
Dirty uniform. You think a billionaire wants your voice?
I know how I look, but I can help.
Derek grabbed her collar, shoved her back.
You clean toilets. Stay in your lane.
Please, sir.
The investor stood, briefcase shut. 200 million. Gone. Derek looked around. Nobody. The black cleaning lady, still standing.
You waste his time. I'll end you.
Iris walked in. 30 seconds later, the investor sat back down. What she did next made everyone in that room wish they'd never threatened her. Iris had been cleaning Sterling and Hale for 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. Not that anyone was counting. Not that anyone noticed when she arrived at 5:30 each morning, or when she left after the last trader slammed his laptop shut at 9 p.m. She knew things about these people that they'd never guess. She knew that the junior analyst on the 12th floor kept a flask in his bottom drawer. She knew that the head of compliance printed personal divorce papers on the company LaserJet every Thursday. She knew that the CEO's assistant cried in the third-floor bathroom at exactly 4:15, 3 days a week. Iris saw everything. Nobody saw Iris. Her supervisor was Derek Holloway, regional vice president, corner office, Yale MBA. The kind of man who wore his watch on the outside of his cuff so everyone could see it cost more than her annual salary. Derek never called her by name. It was you or hey, or just a vague snap of the fingers toward whatever mess he wanted gone. He'd leave half-eaten lunches on his desk, open containers of pad thai, sticky coffee rings on quarterly reports, and then complain to facilities that his office smelled. Your girl needs to do a better job, he'd tell the building manager. Your girl. As if Iris belonged to someone. As if she were a piece of equipment that wasn't functioning properly. His assistant, Sloane Perry, was worse in a different way. Sloane was polite to everyone who mattered and glacial to everyone who didn't. She once filed a formal complaint because Iris had been lingering in the executive corridor. Iris had been emptying the recycling bins. It was literally her job. But Iris never said a word, never corrected them, never let her face show what her mind was thinking. In the break room at lunch, she'd sit in the corner with a worn paperback, while the junior analysts heated their organic grain bowls and talked about weekend plans as if she were a potted plant. One Tuesday, 2 of them, Collins and Brady, stood 4 feet from her and didn't lower their voices. Think she even speaks English properly? Collins said, tilting his head toward Iris without actually looking at her. Brady laughed. Dude, I don't think she speaks at all. Iris turned a page. The book was in French. Camus, The Stranger. The irony would have been delicious if anyone had been paying attention. She finished her chapter, closed the book, and went back to work. Mopped the hallway outside Derek's office. Polished the glass on the conference room doors. Emptied 14 trash cans on the executive floor. Her hands were rough, her back ached, her knees had permanent bruises from the marble floors. But her mind was a cathedral, vast, quiet, full of rooms that nobody in this building knew existed. Rooms with high ceilings and wide windows. Rooms where words lived in 7 different languages, stacked floor to ceiling like books in a library that had never been opened. Not yet, anyway. The email hit every inbox at Sterling and Hale at exactly 8:02 a.m. on a Wednesday. Subject line, priority, all staff. The body was 3 paragraphs of corporate language that boiled down to 1 sentence. Grant Whitfield was coming. The name alone sent a tremor through the building. Whitfield was the founder and chairman of Whitfield Pacific Holdings, a Shanghai-based investment conglomerate with a portfolio worth north of $14 billion. He was 71 years old, Oxford-educated, raised in Hong Kong, and had built his empire by doing what most Western firms couldn't, bridging the gap between American capital and Chinese industry. And he was considering placing $200 million with Sterling and Hale. $200 million. The number echoed through hallways like a heartbeat. It was the kind of deal that made careers, the kind that got your name on the wall in the lobby, the kind that meant bonuses with so many zeros they looked like typos. Derek Holloway was leading the pitch. Of course he was. He'd spent 6 months courting Whitfield's people, dinners, golf outings, a weekend in Napa that he'd expensed without blinking. This was his moment. Regional VP to senior VP, maybe partner, maybe the youngest partner in the firm's history if the deal closed. He called an emergency meeting with his team, sat at the head of the conference table with his sleeves rolled up like a general preparing for battle. "This is it," he said. "Whitfield flies in Thursday night. Meeting is Friday at 10. I want this floor spotless. I want the presentation airtight. I want fresh flowers in the boardroom, and I want someone to figure out what kind of tea this man drinks." Sloan Perry scribbled notes. "I'll handle catering, Japanese or Chinese tea service." Derek waved his hand. "I don't care. Just make it look like we give a damn about his culture." The irony was thick enough to choke on, but nobody choked. A dress code memo went out by noon. No casual Friday this week. Ties mandatory. Presentation rehearsals at 3 and 6. The IT team ran diagnostics on the boardroom AV system twice. Someone from marketing printed Whitfield's Wikipedia page and pinned it to the break room wall like a scouting report. In the middle of all this, Derek found Iris restocking the supply closet on the executive floor. "You," he said, pointing. "The boardroom. I want it deep cleaned. Floors, windows, table, chairs, everything. I want it looking like nobody's ever set foot in that room. Not your usual half job. Are we clear?" Iris nodded once. "Yes, sir. Thursday, end of day, before he arrives." She nodded again. Derek was already walking away, phone to his ear, barking orders at someone else. Iris cleaned the boardroom that afternoon. She polished the mahogany table until it reflected the skyline. She cleaned every window until the glass disappeared. She vacuumed the carpet in 2 directions so the fibers stood at attention. And while she worked, she could hear Derek in the adjacent office, rehearsing his opening remarks through the thin wall. He practiced his greeting. He practiced his handshake timing. He practiced saying, "Whitfield Pacific," with a confident smile. But he kept mispronouncing the name of Whitfield's flagship subsidiary, Jiyuan Capital. He said it flat, like an English word. No tones, no shape, like someone reading a menu item they'd never ordered. Iris heard it, recognized it, knew exactly what was wrong. She said nothing. She kept polishing the table. Derek Holloway grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut in a house with a name, Whitmore Estate. His father was a managing director at a hedge fund. His mother chaired 3 non-profit boards and had never cooked a meal in her life. Derek went to prep school, then Yale, then Wharton for his MBA, then straight into a corner office that his father's phone call had arranged. He was competent enough, smart enough to not get fired, charming enough to work a room. But underneath the tailored suits and the firm handshake was a man who had never once been tested, never failed, never had to claw his way back from anything. The world had been a conveyor belt. Step on, ride forward, collect the title. And he treated people accordingly. The ones above him got deference. The ones below him got indifference. And the ones far below, the cleaners, the security guards, the mailroom staff, they didn't get anything at all. They were scenery. Sloan Perry had studied Derek the way a bird studies the wind. She knew which direction to fly. As his executive assistant, she had mastered the art of selective humanity. Warm and polished to anyone who could advance her career, cold and efficient to everyone else. She kept a mental hierarchy of the building. Executives at the top, analysts in the middle, support staff at the bottom, and cleaning crew, somewhere beneath the bottom, in a category that didn't even warrant acknowledgement. The formal complaint she'd filed against Iris 3 months ago still sat in HR's system. Unauthorized presence in restricted areas. Iris had been emptying the recycling bin outside the CFO's office. The complaint was absurd. HR knew it. Sloan knew it. But the complaint existed, and that was the point. It was a fence. Stay on your side. On Wednesday afternoon, with the Whitfield meeting 20 hours away, Derek held a final strategy session. 8 people around the conference table. Laptops open. Presentation slides on the wall screen. "We need a Mandarin translator," said Nina Torres, the head of client relations. "Whitfield's known to switch languages mid-meeting. It's a power move. We can't be caught flat-footed." Derek nodded. "Already handled. Sloan, who'd you get?" Sloan checked her tablet. "Todd Garner, senior at Northwestern, double major in East Asian Studies and Communications. He's done some freelance translation for a law firm downtown." "He any good?" "He got a B+ in advanced Mandarin, and he's available on short notice." Derek shrugged. "Good enough. What's Whitfield going to do, quiz him?" Nina looked uneasy but said nothing. A B+ college student translating for a billionaire who'd done business in Beijing for 40 years. It was like bringing a pocket knife to a sword fight. But Derek had already moved on. He was clicking through his slides, adjusting font sizes, rehearsing transitions. The translator was a checkbox. Checked. That evening, Iris finished her shift and walked to the elevator. She passed Derek's open office door. He was alone, practicing his pitch to an empty room, gesturing at imaginary investors. She paused. For 1 second, she considered knocking, considered saying, "Excuse me, sir, but you're pronouncing G-Wen wrong. The second tone rises. You're dropping it flat." But she already knew how that would go. The look, the dismissal, the suggestion, spoken or unspoken, that a cleaning lady had no business commenting on Mandarin pronunciation. So she kept walking, pressed the elevator button, rode it down to the lobby. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Friday morning, the building hummed like a tuning fork struck too hard. Iris arrived at 5:15, an hour earlier than usual. She wanted one final pass through the boardroom before the circus began. She polished the table again, straightened the chairs so their backs formed a perfect line, refilled the water carafes with filtered water, and placed them at precise intervals. She wiped down the presentation screen, checked the blinds, and made sure the temperature was set to exactly 68 degrees. She adjusted a single orchid on the credenza. White. Sloan had ordered 3 dozen of them the night before. The room smelled like a high-end hotel, sterile and expensive. By 8 o'clock, the executive floor was vibrating. People walked faster. Voices were tighter. Derek's office door stayed closed. A bad sign. When Derek closed his door, he was either rehearsing or panicking. Today, it was probably both. Todd Garner arrived at 8:30. He was 22, sandy-haired, wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit in the shoulders. He carried a leather notebook that looked brand new. He sat in the reception area, bouncing his knee, flipping through handwritten vocabulary lists like a student cramming for a final exam he wasn't ready for. Iris passed him on her way to the supply closet. He didn't look up. At 9:45, a black sedan pulled up to the building's entrance. Tinted windows. A driver in a dark suit came around to open the rear door. Grant Whitfield stepped out. He was not what the Wikipedia photo had suggested. The photo showed a smiling man at a podium, polished, corporate, interchangeable with any other billionaire at any other conference. In person, Whitfield was something else entirely. He was tall and lean, with silver hair combed straight back. His suit was charcoal, perfectly cut with no tie. His shoes were hand-stitched. But it was his eyes that set him apart. Dark, patient, scanning. The eyes of a man who'd sat across from presidents and factory workers with equal attention, who listened more than he spoke and remembered everything. He walked through the lobby with his hands clasped behind his back. 2 associates followed a step behind, both carrying slim briefcases. The receptionist greeted him with a rehearsed smile. "Welcome to Sterling and Hale, Mr. Whitfield. The team is expecting you on the 30th floor." Whitfield nodded, polite, measured. "Thank you." He turned toward the elevators, and then he stopped. Iris was kneeling by the lobby's glass entrance doors, cleaning a smudge from the lower panel. She hadn't noticed him yet. Her bucket was beside her. Her cloth moved in small, efficient circles. Whitfield looked at her. Not past her, not through her, at her. "Good morning," he said. Iris looked up. She was not used to being spoken to, not by people in charcoal suits. Not by anyone on the executive side of the building. For a fraction of a second, something flickered behind her eyes. Surprise, then recognition of a kindness so small it shouldn't have mattered. But it did. "Good morning, sir," she said. Whitfield gave a slight nod, the kind that acknowledged a person, not a function, and continued to the elevator. Iris watched him go. She didn't know his name yet, didn't know about the 200 million or the Mandarin test or what was about to happen in the boardroom above her. But she knew one thing already. That man was different from the rest of them. Upstairs, Derek was straightening his tie for the 9th time. Sloane was arranging name cards. Todd was mouthing vocabulary words in the hallway, his lips moving with no sound. The clock on the boardroom wall read 9:58. 2 minutes. The meeting began well enough. Derek shook Whitfield's hand with exactly the right amount of pressure. Firm, brief, confident. He'd practiced that too. The first 20 minutes were smooth. Derek walked through the slides. Market analysis, portfolio diversification strategy, risk mitigation framework. He spoke clearly, hit his marks, and only glanced at his notes twice. For a man who'd built his career more on connections than competence, it was a solid performance. Whitfield listened. His face gave away nothing. He asked 2 questions, pointed, precise, and Derek handled them. Not brilliantly, but adequately. Then the tone shifted. It happened between slides 14 and 15. Derek was explaining the fee structure when Whitfield raised his hand. A small gesture, almost gentle, and the room went still. "Mr. Holloway," Whitfield said, "I appreciate the presentation. It's thorough." He paused. "But I've read your materials. I didn't fly from Shanghai to hear numbers I already have." Derek blinked. "Of course, sir. What would you prefer to discuss?" Whitfield leaned back in his chair, and then he spoke in Mandarin. The words came out smooth and deliberate, measured. Not fast, not slow. The tone of a man who was not showing off, but shifting the conversation to a frequency where truth was harder to fake. He said, in Mandarin, "I want to know if this company respects my culture or just my money." The room froze. 8 people around the table, not one of them moved. Derek's smile stayed locked in place, but the color drained from his neck upward, like watching a thermometer run in reverse. His eyes darted to Sloane. Sloane's eyes darted to Todd. Todd straightened in his chair. This was his moment, the thing he'd been hired for. He cleared his throat. Mr. Whitfield says he wants to know about the company's approach to pricing." He paused, looked down at his notes. "He's asking if we can offer a discount on the management fee." Silence. Whitfield's jaw tightened. Just barely, a hairline crack in his composure. He spoke again, faster this time, more Mandarin, a longer passage. Something about cultural partnership, about how money follows trust and trust follows understanding. Todd's pen moved across his notebook. His handwriting was getting smaller, tighter, more frantic. He looked up. He says he appreciates the opportunity and wants to move forward with discussions about a reduced rate. It was wrong. All of it. Not just wrong, it was the opposite of what Whitfield had said. Todd had turned a philosophical challenge into a bargaining request. He'd reduced a test of character to a haggle over fees. Whitfield set his pen down, slowly, the way a judge sets down a gavel before delivering a verdict. He spoke once more in Mandarin. This time Todd caught a word he recognized, or thought he recognized, and translated on the fly. He says the partnership sounds favorable and he's honored to be here. What Whitfield had actually said was, "If you cannot understand my words, how can I trust you with my money?" Whitfield looked at Derek, then at Todd, then at the rest of the table. His expression was not anger. It was something worse. Disappointment. He stood, buttoned his jacket with one hand, reached for his briefcase. $200 million requires trust, he said in English, his voice quiet and final. I don't see it in this room. Derek's mouth opened. Nothing came out. The deal was dying, and everyone at that table knew it. Iris was just outside the boardroom. She hadn't planned to be there. She was collecting the trash bin from the alcove near the water cooler, the one next to the boardroom's side entrance, where the door never fully closed because the hydraulic arm was broken. She'd reported it twice. Nobody had bothered to fix it. Through the gap, she could hear everything. She'd heard the presentation, heard the Mandarin, heard Todd stumble through his translations like a man reading a map upside down. And she heard what Whitfield actually said. Every word, every tone, every shade of meaning that Todd had mangled beyond recognition. She heard the mistranslations. Not close, not approximately wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. The kind of wrong that doesn't just miss the point, it insults it. And now she heard the chair push back, heard the briefcase snap shut, heard the silence that follows when $200 million stands up and walks toward the door. Iris stood very still. The trash bag was in her left hand. Her right hand rested on the supply cart. The fluorescent light above her buzzed faintly. Her heart was pounding, not from fear, from something older and more complicated. The pull between who the world told her she was and who she actually was. 3 years she'd kept her mouth shut. 3 years of "your girl" and "does she even speak English?" and formal complaints about lingering in hallways she was paid to clean. 3 years of silence. The boardroom door opened. One of Whitfield's associates stepped out first, already reaching for his phone. Whitfield followed, his face set like stone, his briefcase in hand. And Iris spoke. "Please stay, Mr. Whitfield." She said it in Mandarin. Flawless Mandarin. Her voice was calm, clear. The Mandarin was flawless. Not textbook flawless, but lived-in flawless. The tones landed with the precision of someone who'd spoken the language for decades. The register was formal but warm, respectful without being subservient. Whitfield stopped. His hand was still on his briefcase handle. He turned slowly toward the voice and found himself looking at a black woman in a gray cleaning uniform, holding a trash bag, standing beside a yellow supply cart in a fluorescent-lit hallway. He stared. Behind him, Derek appeared in the doorway. His face was a museum of confusion, mouth open, brows pulled together, eyes jumping between Whitfield and Iris like he was watching a tennis match played in a language he didn't understand. Iris set the trash bag down. She stepped forward, not timidly, not aggressively, with the quiet authority of someone who had been underestimated for the last time. She spoke again, in Mandarin, fluent, flowing, unhesitating. "Mr. Whitfield, please forgive the confusion. What my colleague intended to express is that Sterling and Hale deeply values the cultural foundation upon which your business philosophy is built. We understand that respect is the currency that precedes capital. And we understand that trust is not built through slides, it is built through understanding." The words hung in the air like a held breath, every syllable precise, every tone correct, not a single hesitation. Whitfield's expression shifted. The disappointment didn't vanish, but something else appeared beneath it. Curiosity, the kind of curiosity a man develops after 7 decades of reading people and being surprised by very few of them. "Who are you?" he asked quietly, in Mandarin. Iris didn't flinch. "I'm Iris Mitchell," she said, in Mandarin without a beat of hesitation. "I clean this building." Whitfield studied her face for a long moment. Behind him, the entire boardroom had gone absolutely still. Todd was frozen mid-note. Sloane's pen had fallen to the table without her noticing. Nina Torres had her hand pressed over her mouth. Derek said nothing. He couldn't. His mouth was open, but no words were forming. His brain was trying to reconcile 2 realities. The cleaning lady he'd never once spoken to by name, and the woman now conducting a high-level conversation in fluent Mandarin with the most important investor of his career. The 2 realities did not fit together, and that was Derek's problem, not Iris's. Whitfield spoke again, longer this time. A complex sentence about the relationship between cultural literacy and commercial trust, delivered at the speed he'd use with a native speaker in a boardroom in Beijing. Iris listened, nodded once, and responded, matching his pace, matching his register, matching his depth. The room watched a cleaning lady save a $200 million deal in a language that none of them could speak. And not one of them could look away. For the next several minutes, Whitfield and Iris spoke in Mandarin, while the rest of the room sat in a silence so thick it felt physical. Nobody typed, nobody whispered, nobody breathed too loudly. The presentation slides still glowed on the wall screen behind them, forgotten. Whitfield was testing her. Not cruelly, the way a musician tests another musician. He shifted the conversation toward economic policy in the Asia-Pacific corridor. Iris followed without blinking. He referenced a specific clause in the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, Article 12.3, Investment Facilitation for Developing Member States. She clarified a nuance he'd simplified, correcting the distinction between market access and national treatment obligations. He raised an eyebrow. Not many people corrected Grant Whitfield. Fewer still did it correctly. Then he switched. "Do you speak French?" he asked without warning. He said it in French. Iris tilted her head, a small gesture, almost amused. "Fluently," she said, in French. "I studied comparative linguistics for 8 years. French was my first research language." Whitfield's lips twitched. The beginning of a smile he hadn't given anyone in that building all morning. He continued in French, something about the structural parallels between Mandarin tonal systems and French phonetic rhythm. Iris responded as if she'd been waiting for someone to ask her that question for years. He switched again, German this time. "And German?" "Of course," Iris replied, in German. Her accent was clean, not Berlin sharp, but educated, with the rounded vowels of someone who'd spent time in academic circles where precision mattered more than speed. Whitfield leaned forward in his chair. He was no longer testing. He was fascinated. He tried Japanese. Iris gave a slight bow, barely perceptible but correct. The kind of bow that signaled respect without overdoing it. The kind that takes a lifetime to learn and a second to recognize. "Yes, Mr. Whitfield, I speak Japanese as well." She said it in Japanese, using the formal register reserved for superiors and honored guests. Not the casual form a tourist would learn. The form that takes years to master. The form that tells a Japanese speaker you understand not just their language, but their culture, their hierarchy, their entire system of meaning. At the table, Sloane Perry had stopped pretending to take notes. Her pen sat untouched on the legal pad. Her mouth was slightly open. She looked like someone watching a magic trick performed 3 feet in front of her face with no curtain and no explanation. Collins, the analyst who'd asked if Iris spoke English, had pushed his chair back from the table. His face had gone the color of old paper. He couldn't look at her. He couldn't look away. Todd Garner sat perfectly still. His vocabulary notebook was closed. His hands were flat on the table. He understood now with painful and absolute clarity what a B+ in advanced Mandarin actually meant when measured against the real thing. Whitfield laughed. A real laugh. Not the polite corporate chuckle he'd given during the presentation. A genuine, warm, full sound that filled the room and changed its entire temperature. "How many languages?" he asked, switching back to English. His eyes were bright now, engaged in a way they hadn't been all morning. 6 fluently, Iris said. English, Mandarin, French, German, Japanese, and Spanish. I'm working on Portuguese. It's close to Spanish, but the phonology keeps tripping me up. I'd call it functional, but not fluent. 7 languages, Whitfield said. He shook his head slowly, not in disbelief, in recognition. He'd built his entire career crossing cultural borders. He knew exactly how rare this kind of mastery was. "And you clean this building?" It wasn't a question. It was an indictment. He turned to Derek. The room turned with him. Every pair of eyes landed on the regional vice president of Sterling and Hale Financial, who was still standing in the boardroom doorway with his mouth half open and his carefully rehearsed presentation completely, irreversibly forgotten. "Mr. Holloway," Whitfield said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, which made it infinitely worse. "You have a woman in your building who speaks 7 languages, who understands cross-cultural business communication at a level I have rarely encountered in 40 years of international deal-making. And you have her emptying trash cans." Derek swallowed. His Adam's apple bobbed like a cork in rough water. We didn't," he started. Whitfield held up one hand. "Please," he said, "don't." The room was so quiet that Iris could hear the air conditioning cycling through the vents above her head. She stood exactly where she was, back straight, hands at her sides. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat, she didn't look at Derek. She didn't need to. Everyone else was already looking at him. Iris Mitchell didn't learn languages. She collected them, the way some people collect stamps or vinyl records or first editions. Except hers were alive, breathing, constantly growing. It started when she was 7 years old in a one-bedroom apartment on the south side of Chicago. Her mother worked 2 jobs, one at a dry cleaner's, one at a Vietnamese restaurant on Archer Avenue. Young Iris would sit on a milk crate behind the restaurant's kitchen and listen. She didn't understand the words at first, but she understood the music, the rise and fall, the rhythm, the way a sentence could sound like a question or a command depending on which note you hit. By 9, she could order in Vietnamese. By 11, she was translating between the kitchen staff and the health inspector. By 13, her mother couldn't keep up. Iris won a full scholarship to the University of Illinois, linguistics. She tore through the program in 3 years, French, German, Mandarin, Japanese, followed during her master's at Georgetown. Spanish she picked up in a summer in Oaxaca because she was bored and the family she stayed with didn't speak English. She earned her Ph.D. in comparative phonology at 31. Published 2 papers on tonal acquisition in Mandarin that were cited in journals she'd been reading since undergrad. She was hired as an assistant professor at a small but respected liberal arts college in the Midwest. She had an office with her name on the door. She had students who called her Dr. Mitchell. Then life did what life does when it's not paying attention to your plans. Her daughter, Amara, was diagnosed at age 4 with a rare autoimmune disorder, one of those conditions with a long Latin name and a short list of treatment options. The medical bills came like a tide, first ankle deep, then knee deep, then over her head. Insurance covered some, not enough. The university's plan had gaps wide enough to drive a truck through. Iris burned through her savings in 11 months, sold her car, borrowed from her mother who had nothing to spare but gave anyway. Then the budget cuts came. The college slashed the humanities department. Iris's position was eliminated, not because of performance, but because enrollment in linguistics had dropped 12%, and the board needed a line item to cut. She applied to other universities, dozens of them. But academia is a small, strange world. The gap in her resume raised questions. The lack of recent publications raised more. She was 43 years old with a Ph.D. and 7 languages, and no one would return her calls. Amara needed a second round of treatment. The hospital wanted a deposit. Iris needed a paycheck, any paycheck, within the week. She walked into a janitorial staffing agency on a Tuesday afternoon. They didn't ask about her education. They didn't ask what languages she spoke. They asked if she could start Thursday. She could. Sterling and Hale Financial, 30th floor, 5:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., $14.50 an hour. She told herself it was temporary, a bridge, 6 months, maybe a year, just until Amara stabilized, just until she could get back on her feet. 3 years passed. Amara got better. The bridge didn't end. But Iris never stopped. She read Camus in the break room. She listened to Mandarin business podcasts while mopping hallways. She practiced German grammar in her head while scrubbing toilets. She conjugated Japanese verbs while riding the L train home at 10 p.m. The languages lived inside her, quietly, patiently, like seeds in dry soil waiting for rain. And today, in a boardroom on the 30th floor, the rain had finally come. Whitfield sat back down. He placed his briefcase on the floor beside his chair. He unbuttoned his jacket and adjusted the cuff of his sleeve. These were not the gestures of a man about to leave. These were the gestures of a man who had just decided to stay. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "please, Sit. He gestured to the empty chair at the far end of the table, the one that had been reserved for no one, the one with no name card, the one closest to the door where Iris had been standing with a trash bag 30 seconds ago. Iris looked at the chair, then at Derek, then at the chair again. She walked to the table, pulled the chair out, and sat down. Her cleaning uniform was still damp at the knees from scrubbing the lobby floor that morning. She didn't adjust it. She didn't apologize for it. She sat like she belonged there. Derek opened his mouth. "Sir, with all due respect, she's not part of the—" "Mr. Holloway." Whitfield's voice was soft, the way a surgeon's hands are soft before the first incision. "She is the only person in this room who has shown me competence. I'd like her to stay." Derek closed his mouth. Sloane made a note on her legal pad. It was the only thing she'd written in the last 15 minutes. What happened next would become the most talked-about meeting in Sterling and Hale's 40-year history. Whitfield shifted the negotiation entirely into Mandarin. Not to exclude anyone, though it did, but because this was how he did business. This was how he tested trust. And for the first time that morning, he had someone at the table who could meet him there. Iris translated in real time. Not just the words, the meaning. When Whitfield used an idiom about a horse recognizing its master, Iris didn't translate it literally. She explained the concept, then connected it to the American equivalent, then turned to Derek and said, "He's asking whether your firm has the institutional memory to support a long-term relationship, or whether you'll rotate his account to a new manager every 18 months. Derek stared at her for a long moment. Then he answered the question. It was the most honest, least rehearsed thing he'd said all morning. Something about continuity of care and relationship-first philosophy. It wasn't elegant, but it was true. Whitfield noticed, and for the first time he nodded at Derek with something close to approval. The negotiation continued. Clause by clause, Iris guided the conversation between two languages and two cultures with the ease of someone crossing between rooms in her own house. She caught things no one else would have caught. When the standard contract template included an arbitration clause specifying New York jurisdiction, Iris flagged it. Mr. Whitfield's portfolio companies typically arbitrate through the Singapore International Arbitration Center, she said to Nina Torres, who was handling the legal framework. New York jurisdiction might read as presumptuous. I'd suggest offering Singapore as the primary venue with New York as an alternative. Nina blinked. How do you know that? It's in the footnotes of his annual report, Iris said quietly. Page 94. Whitfield smiled, a real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes and stays there. Later, when the conversation turned to fee structures, Iris identified a clause buried in Appendix C that would have allowed Sterling and Hale to charge a performance fee on unrealized gains, a provision that, in Whitfield's world, was considered not just aggressive, but disrespectful. It was the financial equivalent of charging someone rent on a house they hadn't moved into yet. You'll want to remove that, Iris told Derek. Her voice was calm, professional, not triumphant, not bitter, just precise. In Chinese business culture, charging on unrealized gains signals short-term thinking. Mr. Whitfield builds relationships measured in decades. This clause tells him you're thinking in quarters. Derek looked at the clause, looked at Iris, looked at Whitfield, whose expression confirmed everything she'd said without a single word. Remove it, Derek said to Sloane. His voice was hoarse. The meeting lasted another 2 hours. By the end, every major term had been agreed upon. Whitfield's associates drafted a preliminary memorandum of understanding on the spot. $200 million, 20-year partnership, performance reviews conducted bilingually, a personal note added by Whitfield himself, handwritten in Mandarin, at the bottom of the last page. When the last page was initialed, Whitfield stood. The room stood with him. He walked around the table, past Derek, past Sloane, past Nina and Todd and Collins and every other person who had been in that room since 10 o'clock that morning. He stopped in front of Iris. He extended his hand. It has been a genuine pleasure, Ms. Mitchell. Iris shook it. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Whitfield. He held her hand a beat longer than protocol required. Then he said, in Mandarin, quietly so only she could hear, You shouldn't be mopping floors here. Iris met his eyes. I know, she said, in Mandarin. 2 words. Nothing else needed. He turned to Derek last, shook his hand the way you shake the hand of someone who got lucky and both of you know it. Mr. Holloway, he said, you almost lost $200 million today. I'd encourage you to think carefully about why. He didn't wait for an answer. He buttoned his jacket, picked up his briefcase, and walked out of the boardroom with his associates 1 step behind. The door closed with a soft click. Nobody spoke for a very long time. The story spread through Sterling and Hale like a brush fire. By Friday afternoon, everyone on every floor had heard some version of it. The cleaning lady spoke Mandarin. The cleaning lady saved the Whitfield deal. The cleaning lady made Derek Holloway look like a fool in front of a billionaire. The versions varied in detail, but agreed on one thing. Nobody had seen it coming. And nobody could stop talking about it. By Monday morning, the security camera footage from the boardroom had been watched by every member of the executive committee. The CEO of Sterling and Hale, a woman named Eleanor Voss, watched it 3 times. She watched Iris walk in with a trash bag. She watched Iris sit down at the table in her cleaning uniform. She watched Iris navigate a $200 million negotiation in a language that no one else on the payroll could speak. Then, she picked up the phone. Iris was restocking the supply closet on the 14th floor when her supervisor found her. Ms. Mitchell, the CEO wants to see you. 30th floor. Now! Iris set down the paper towels, straightened her uniform, took the elevator up. Eleanor Voss's office was the largest in the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of Lake Michigan stretching out like hammered silver, a desk the size of a small boat. She was standing when Iris walked in, not sitting behind her desk. Standing, as a sign of respect. Sit down, Ms. Mitchell. She gestured to the chair across from her. I've watched the footage from Friday's meeting 3 times. I've also spoken with Mr. Whitfield personally. Iris sat. Her hands were folded in her lap, calm. He told me, Voss continued, that in 40 years of international business, he has rarely encountered someone with your level of linguistic and cultural competence. Those were his exact words. She paused. He also told me that we nearly lost the deal because we failed to recognize what we had right in front of us. Iris said nothing. There was nothing to add. I'm going to be direct with you, Voss said. I'm creating a new position, Director of International Client Relations. It didn't exist before today. I'm creating it because of you, and I'm offering it to you. She slid a folder across the desk. Inside, a formal offer letter, a salary that was 6 times what Iris earned cleaning floors, a comprehensive benefits package, and a signing clause. Full medical coverage, Voss said. No gaps, no caps on specialist referrals. I understand you have a daughter who needs ongoing treatment. Iris looked at the folder. She didn't open it immediately. She looked at Eleanor Voss, a woman who, until this moment, had never spoken to her, had never known her name, had walked past her in the lobby 1,000 times without a glance. I have one condition, Iris said. Voss raised an eyebrow. Name it. The cleaning staff on this floor. There are 7 of them. They don't have health insurance through the janitorial agency. I want Sterling and Hale to extend basic medical coverage to all contracted cleaning personnel in this building. The room was quiet for 3 seconds. Then Voss nodded. Done. Iris opened the folder and signed. The news moved fast. By Wednesday, Derek Holloway had been reassigned to the firm's satellite office in Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a firing, it was a relocation, the corporate equivalent of being sent to your room. His corner office on the 30th floor was cleared out by Thursday afternoon. Sloane Perry was transferred to a different department. She sent Iris an email that read, "Congratulations on your new role. Well deserved." Iris read it. She did not reply. Collins, the analyst from the break room, stopped Iris in the hallway on her first day in her new role. He looked like he'd been rehearsing what to say for 3 days. Ms. Mitchell, I owe you an apology. What I said in the break room, I'm ashamed of it. Iris looked at him, steady, not hostile, not warm. Thank you, Collins, she said. I appreciate that. And she kept walking. On Friday morning, Exactly 1 week after the Whitfield meeting, Iris walked into her new office, corner of the 30th floor, the same floor she'd mopped for 3 years. She placed one item on her desk before anything else. A worn paperback. Camus, The Stranger. She set it on the mahogany bookshelf beside the window, spine facing out, and let the morning light fall across it. Then she sat down, opened her laptop, and got to work. 6 months later, Iris Mitchell sat at the head of a conference table in a room she used to clean, negotiating a cross-border partnership with a German manufacturing firm. She conducted the first half in English, the second half in German, and closed the deal with a handshake and a joke about Stuttgart traffic that made the entire room laugh. Her daughter, Amara, was 12 now. The autoimmune disorder was in remission. The specialist said the prognosis was excellent. Amara had started learning French, her mother's first research language, and was already correcting her classmates' pronunciation with the same quiet confidence Iris had once used in a Georgetown lecture hall. Whitfield Pacific Holdings' $200 million was performing above projections. Whitfield himself called Iris once a month, always in Mandarin, always on a Tuesday, always at 7 in the morning. They talked about markets and culture and the price of good jasmine tea. He never once asked to speak with Derek Holloway. Iris started a foundation. She called it Bridge Voices. It offered free language instruction to underprivileged women, women who cleaned offices and waited tables and drove buses and carried entire worlds inside their heads that nobody bothered to ask about. The first cohort was 12 women. By the second year, it was 200. Mandarin, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. The waiting list was long. She was invited to give a keynote at a linguistics conference in Geneva. She gave it in 3 languages, English, French, and Mandarin, switching between them the way a musician shifts between keys. The audience gave her a standing ovation. She didn't cry. She'd done enough of that in supply closets. On a Tuesday morning, a year to the day after the Whitfield meeting, Iris walked through the same marble lobby she'd once scrubbed on her knees. She wore a tailored navy suit. Her heels clicked against the stone with a sound that carried. Near the entrance, a new cleaning woman was wiping down the glass doors. Young, quiet, head down, invisible. Iris stopped. "Good morning," she said. The woman looked up, startled. People in suits didn't talk to her, not in this building, not anywhere. "I'm Iris Mitchell. I work on the 30th floor. What's your name?" The woman hesitated. "Gloria," she said. "Gloria Barnes." Iris smiled. "It's nice to meet you, Gloria. If you ever need anything at all, my door is open." Gloria watched her walk to the elevator. She didn't understand yet why a director at Sterling and Hale would stop to learn the cleaning lady's name. She would, eventually. Some stories take time. Now here's what I want to ask you, and I mean this. Think about it before you answer. What talent are you carrying that the world hasn't seen yet? What skill, what knowledge, what fire is sitting inside you right now while people walk past you like you're not even there? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. Because if Iris Mitchell can go from scrubbing floors at 5:30 in the morning to negotiating billion-dollar deals in 7 languages, then whatever you're holding inside you, it's not too late. It was never too late. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Someone who's been overlooked, someone who's been underestimated, someone who's been cleaning floors while carrying a cathedral in their head. And if you haven't already, subscribe, hit that bell, because stories like this, they don't get told enough. And I'm not done telling them.
7 languages, a PhD, 3 years on her knees, and nobody in that building ever asked her name. Grant Whitfield walked through the lobby and said good morning to a woman cleaning glass. 2 words, that's all it took to be different from everyone in that building. Derek spent 6 months chasing this deal, rehearsed every slide, practiced every handshake, and he lost it, not because he lacked competence, but because he was drowning in contempt. He couldn't see a person standing 3 feet from his door. The most expensive mistake in that boardroom wasn't a bad translation. It was the belief that a cleaning uniform tells you everything about the person wearing it. So here's what I want you to sit with tonight. If your talent had to live in silence for 3 years, would it survive? And when someone invincible finally speaks, do you hear a voice or do you just hear a uniform? What if the person you walk past every day is carrying something the world desperately needs? Drop it in the comments. What are you carrying that nobody's seen yet? And if someone you know needs to hear this today, share it. Subscribe, hit the bell. Stories like Iris don't get told enough. And I'm just getting started.